Hey everyone, greetings. Thank you so much for being here with me today. You are now tuned in to Journey of a Healed Success Stepper, the Emotional Healing Solutions Program, and we're on step number 5. So we've gone through 1 through 4, and I'm your host, Dr. Dorina Shine, and I'm going to share with you the concept that I've learned as an ex-convicted felon in the state of Ohio, under a case that dealt with involuntary intoxication. So I'm going to share something with you specifically today, and then we're going to go into the steps. The first thing was that whether voluntarily or involuntarily intoxicated, if you've been induced with something that at the time, according to the state of Ohio, was illegal, that meant that you really walked into the court with dirty hands, allegedly. But one thing that I find very amazing, because people don't want to talk about this because they don't know, their system would become flooded with stories of people who have been ingested by things that they did not know was involved in what they actually officially took. Now, in some cases, people will take advantage of that, and I get it. I get that, the system would be flooded. Every time somebody would do something crazy, they would blame it on involuntarily or voluntary intoxication. In my case, voluntarily intoxicating myself with marijuana, which at the time was illegal, yet marijuana has been used for centuries and it's legal today. So it literally shows that it didn't even need to be illegal in the beginning, okay? As well as alcohol. So alcohol at the time was legal. The inducement of voluntarily drinking the alcohol was what I was accountable for. That's why 32 years went down to 18 months. But what I don't understand and I don't get is how a system can look at me as competent to stand on a trial that I could not remember the incidents of. I remember up to the blackout and then being in county jail. Everything else is a blur, okay? So since that is a situation for me, my question now becomes to the state of Ohio is, how can a judge me for not remembering? He wasn't there. The witnesses, based on the way people see things, they can testify. That was all they had. No true video of anything being done. And I get it. The audio was there. Okay. I hear some things, but you can hear things that are different than what is actually going on. So I think that was another reason why the reduction in sentencing was so incredible. Okay. Now, I also have to say this in recognition to anyone who has been laced. That is a hidden situation that we have to live with quietly. Nobody ever will know. It will be an easy, sense of change. You'll see a change. You'll wonder how you got addicted. You'll wonder how this happened. That's why recovery is the only way out of lacing. Because if not, you will continually go down that path. So back to involuntary and voluntary intoxication, which in some instances on either side are not a defense in the court of law in the state of Ohio, I have to now say the competency of my mindset at the time of the offense. Not am I able to stand trial today, because today I am recovered. Today I am free. 5 years, at this time, I was on bond 5 years, working on myself, healing myself, finding out what really took place. So at that time, I'm competent, yes. I'm in recovery, yes. But at the offset, when I go to trial, when I sit in that box to defend and fight for my life, it was disproportionate. And the reason I say it was disproportionate, I was a minority that was not looked at as having been laced. Never even came up. And if you look at the court docket, you look at the appellate decision, they never took into consideration the fact that I said that I was not guilty due to the incompetence. I was unable to testify for myself because there was things that I did not remember. So then it brings the case down to the fact that I will always, as a minority in a system that is broken, in a system that is one-sided, in a system that is racist, in a system that is unjust, I will always be incompetent to stand trial in that type of system. As a person with an education, a civil servant, no criminal record, no criminal record before March 23rd, did not volunteer to be laced. So all of my human rights were violated. Now, in the same instance, the Judge Lou Diapolito Sr., yes, you did, have a heart, I would say. But on the flip side of it, if you would have had a better heart if you had have heard the entire story. So technically, a judge cannot competently judge fairly and equally to a individual who is disproportionate and looks disproportionate to an unjust or unfair system. And that's something that I studied in my undergraduate program when I was going to do disproportionate minority confinement, when I looked at African American men being we're making 12% to 17% of a society, but we're making 85% of the incarcerated institution. So that literally means that either we're being targeted or we're the only ones committing crimes. And as we see with the epidemic of heroin and the epidemic of fentanyl, that ain't the case. So to make a long story short, I'm not going to blame it on racism. I'm going to blame it on the ignorance of people who judge that don't have the competency to judge. I'm going to blame it on the fact that I needed to be more aware of who I was surrounding myself with. Now I know better. That's why I'm going to go into emotional healing step number 5, because this is very, very vital and important to the growth of your recovery. And I am doing this because I've shut the door to my past. It is there. I'm an ex-convicted felon who has turned inspirational speaker, who don't have to look back and use that as a means of shoulda, woulda, coulda. I'm actually doing the damn thing. And for many who knew me before any of this happened, guess what? I was doing a damn thing back then too. Because I'm not that one that a person can just throw my name and throw whatever they want on me. I'm going to fight with every power invested in me. So let's get on with the emotional healing solution step number 5. The very thing that kept me alive and in my conscious state while all of this hell was going on in my life. Let's go. So, yes, and I did receive information about the way I'm setting up my camera. So basically, it's the way that I'm doing it. And so I got to kind of move everything. There we go. There we go. I think you can see everything. Yeah, there we go. There we go. So, Emotional Healing Solutions is my program under my undergraduate study for my master's degree program in Youngstown State University, which is a local community university in the state of Ohio. And so it sits in the Criminal Justice Department, and it is copywritten 2012. Okay, so basically, Divine Legacy is telling me that I am to stick to the solution, period. I made these steps very simple. So 1 through 4 is talking about going deep within, finding out who you are, recognizing that there's a pattern of behavior you must adhere to when focusing on your healing to emotional solutions. And so now we're moving into the meat of the criteria of what to do. So you've awakened to something that was horrific. You don't know your name. You have no idea what is going on. You are tied to a criminal case. Like in my case, I was tied to a criminal case. I won't say you because I don't want to manifest that. But I was tied to a criminal case that had me confused, right? In this confusion, I began to do what most of our minority community begins to do. At this time, I began to pray. I began to look for something out, either higher than myself or outside of myself. That's not the argument right now. But it was the awakening to understand, well, okay, if religion didn't take me all the way through life, what happens is there is a space and time when a person awakens. It's like a twilight. Have you ever been under a surgical procedure and then you wake up and you're like very, very confused? You're like looking in certain areas and different things, and you're like, well, where am I at, or what's going on? That twilight was the awakening that took place during the time of my healing process beginning, the initial beginning of healing, because I knew something had gone on. I could not point the finger at anything, not even myself, because I'm like, it wasn't anything but I thought a mental illness break. So I'm thinking, not thinking in any way, shape, or form it's, drugs or a lacing or anything of that nature. So my divine legacy was telling me, you're going to learn a lot, and it's going to be some years that's going to tap into what you're going to learn. So as I'm awakening and I'm in pain and I'm dealing with the concepts of all the loss and all of the disrespect and all of the hate that came with me being who I was, talking about success, I then realized I had to stick to the solution. And what was the solution? I had to have a plan. And what was the plan? Well, see, I had to go deep within and I had to find out the plan is me. I have to stay in recovery. I have to stay under the umbrella of safety. And that could be a God of your understanding. Jesus Christ is a religion. It could be universal order. It could be ancestral practice. It could be all of that. So it can be all of that. And when you realize that you have a divine legacy, nobody can stop that. So not only are you determined to pull yourself up by the bootstraps of your own belief system. See, you may have been a victim at the time. You may have been a victim at a time. But when you wake up and you see the twilight and you recognize that you're in that mode and you're in that middle ground, that's when you can truly say to yourself, guess what? I deserve the respect that I need in order to empower myself to be successful. Nobody else is going to tap into your success the way that you would tap into your success. See, no one will come to save you until you feel that you are going to ignite that. Because see, Jesus, Yahweh, universal creator, most high, whoever you want to label your God of your understanding has been knocking on the door the entire time, and you've ignored that voice. And then when you get laced and you start to hear voices, you start to see things that are not there. You start to have to fight for your life because you believe that people are coming towards you to attack you. And that's all you know. This is what the psychedelic low vibrational drug can do. So the only thing that I can tell a person, if, I had a email come through and it was very deep. And one thing that I would say, if I had to give someone some advice on how not to get laced, I would say definitely hindsight. Pay attention to your mindset. Pay attention to how you're hearing things. Because I do remember hearing voices and I'm like, what? I start, what is that? Oh, who's talking? And then you start to go down that rabbit hole like Alice in Wonderland. You start to trip. You start to feel a certain, like just emptiness. You feel a certain emptiness. And I don't know if that is God spiritually wiping away all of this stuff that has happened in order for you to overthrow yourself into the healing process. Or if it's something that you're just not resonating with because you don't understand it, and to stay there too long will keep you in a rigor of mental health, So I won't go deeper into anything else. There's going to be many other conversations that we're going to have about the mental health part that creates a psychosis in the mindset that makes you feel this way because you're triggered by the chemical reaction of the drug that, in my case, I did not voluntarily ingest. So I know that the court system understood that, but they couldn't put it into term. They couldn't put it into their docket because to do so will open them up to a whole new genre of criminal law. People coming into court, period, in most cases, as Judge Millian would say, has no defense if they walk in with dirty hands. Well, what if you were induced by something that was legal, and a couple puffs of a rolled joint is not going to make you want to go out there and wild out and act a fool? But if something is in it, then there's a different agent to that story. There's a different avenue that you got to look at. And if a judge cannot be fair in looking at the whole facts, instead of trying to just make sure that certain things are shut out of a criminal justice system, with the majority of individuals coming in looking like the disproportionate minorities that are confined under the same law, then we're going to have problems. And then there's going to be rebuttals. So now this is my appeal to what I was judged under. I served my time. There's nothing else to do in that circumstance. But one thing that I can recommend is that if someone feels that they're not feeling good, something is wrong, you're disoriented, you just start adding the pieces of the puzzle together. Because that high, trust and believe, if you voluntarily induced it, that high is going to last way longer But if you involuntarily induce it, that drug is going to immediately, when you start to take control over your mindset, you're going to be able to fight that drug. That drug is not going to be able to do anything to you if you're in the awareness that something is going on. Something else happened. So this is for those who, are going down that path of success. That's another trigger. You have people who are very envious, people who, whose goal is to see you fall so that you won't get to where you need to be. That is a serious psychological blueprint that's imprinted in the American fabric since it's been slavery. So these same people are the same individuals that will sit back and tell you that you have to be judged in their system. So the only thing I can say is stay as far away from the criminal justice system as you can while continuing to live your life. Don't hold on to the precepts of hate and anger and envy and chaos to the past. Close the door to the past. That's what I had to do. Close the door to the past. And anybody that is not riding with me today, I got to close the door to you too. Because basically you're keeping me stuck and stagnated in a place that will continue to trigger my anger. That's like being in an abusive relationship with someone who constantly triggers you. But you keep holding on. You keep standing firm. You keep standing tall. But remember to be responsible in every avenue. Even if you feel that something has taken place, call 911. Tell them to check you out. Don't go out there trying to figure it out. I literally drove 7 miles under the influence of that. They didn't incorporate that in the case. But I literally drove 7 miles listening to something that I did not even understand. That could have been a homicide, a vehicular homicide. You see, that could have been, anything. And that's because you don't induce people without their knowledge. You take away their right to free will and freedom to live. And this is what happened when the Tin Man doesn't have a heart. He don't give a damn about you. His whole goal is to see you basic at the bottom. The same individuals that allowed their society to believe that they're better to make other people work for them. Do you not think that these same individuals will ingest prescription medications to people who don't need it? Suggest root canals to dental work just to get you hooked and charged on whatever type of drug in order for you to numb the pain? For you to sit back and say that I'm going to go and help and pull someone up because of the term success. And that's like a dirty word when it comes to disproportionate minorities. They're not supposed to be talking success, especially in a system that is aware of the discrimination. You're just supposed to be the basic. Bullied by the bullies, narcissistically controlled by the system. You're never supposed to awaken. You're never supposed to heal. And you're never supposed to receive your heaven on earth. But I digress. And I say to you, it is possible, but it takes a lot of work, a lot of emotional healing solutions, alternatives to whatever it is you're suffering from. And these solutions work for every situation. It helped me stop smoking. It helped me to awaken myself to the knowledge of awareness of what is going on, instinct. It helped me to become independent, more independent. See, physically, you can have your own home, buy your own items, do what you do physically. But when you're spiritually free, it is just a phenomena that makes you say, it is worth it. It is worth it. And it's a journey. But I just have to share with you, involuntary or voluntary intoxication under a different type of discriminatory act regardless where you are, could not necessarily go in your favor. So if we're mindful of that, I think our initial steps are going to be far easier to study, to understand, to comprehend before we make that decision to just be in grief forever or be depressed or, not do the research on our medicine that is supposed to do this but have a million side effects. Those side effects are things that could possibly work against your chemistry. That is nothing but a legal prescribed lacing. So I have decided to remain pure and do nothing. Nothing at all. And this is the recovered outcome. So thank you so much for being here with me today. Thank you for rocking with your girl. Man, this is a very, very personal. It's like I'm putting myself out on the front line just to save people who may have to go through this or who may be naive, but I'm just opening up my experience to help you, not to be judged, because I don't care. I've been judged by the most incompetent of judges, and I still survived. So I have no problem with the incompetency. But what I do have a problem with is when the door is shut, let no man open it again, not even you. So this is coming from a healed success stepper. Dr. Dorina Shine, I thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.